Nigeria is Africa's top oil and gas producer, but nonetheless, it suffers chronic power shortages. According to the World Bank, nearly half of all Nigerians lack reliable access to energy. The country is also experiencing insecurity challenge of what some describe as a kidnapping epidemic. So ahead of the 2023 general elections, security will be a key challenge to whoever wins the race to govern Africa's largest economy and most populous nation. Founder of Reset Nigeria Initiative and presidential candidate Prince Malik Ado-Ibrahim says he is internationally recognized in the energy and security sectors, and he says he is the man to solve some of Nigeria's biggest challenges. I am Usman Ali Uba, and I have been speaking to Prince Malik one-on-one. Welcome to our program one-on-one, Mr. Malik Ado-Ibrahim. First of all, I would like to start with the question in order to introduce you to our audience. Can you please tell us who is Malik Ado-Ibrahim?
Well, thank you very much for having me first. It's nice to be here. I think quite easily to describe myself as a world traveler, as a bit of an African adventurer, and really a Pan-Africanist in the sense that I'm looking for the best for my continent and my country. And I think there is a new dawn in Africa where a different set and a different age group of individuals is realizing that it's our time to rise. Malik Ado-Ibrahim just happens to be one of those people that's challenging the status quo. I believe that what I bring to the political environment in Africa is completely different. And I'm looking forward to challenging the status quo with what I have in mind.
Taken from the point of challenging the status quo, of course, Nigeria, as we know, is at crossroads. Yeah. Lots of challenges, bedeviling, if you like, challenges facing the nation as a whole. Unfortunately, the insecurity challenge, be it banditry, kidnapping, terrorism, so challenging the status quo. I'm aware of your initiative, which is Reset Nigeria in quotes.
Yes.
What does that mean to reset Nigeria? We have lots of leaders come and go, people promising to, tackle especially the insecurity challenge, but we haven't saw any profound, strong solution. Resetting Nigeria, what does that mean? What does that entail?
Well, that is the question that a lot of people ask me because that's the agenda I'm running on. And it's basically getting us back to the basics. I feel that the current crowd and the previous crowd over the last 30 years in Nigeria has not really done anything different. It's just been layers of the same thing over and over again. And the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, hoping for a different result, and it's not coming. Reset Nigeria is to fix the fundamentals. And it's very similar to what Turkey did. We've worked on some very similar things. Power. Without power, you don't have a country, you don't have an economy, you don't have healthcare, you don't have anything. We're a country of 230 people with approximately 4,000 megawatts of power. I think the whole of Istanbul has more power than the whole of Nigeria. And so Reset is fixing that issue, and not fixing it in the sense that most of the other politicians have come in to fix it. It's fixing it with modern techniques, having a renewable energy input, an energy mix that brings hydro, conventional, renewable, not looking at the existing infrastructure, but building a different kind of infrastructure. So power is one, security is another. And the security is, again, very similar to what Turkey's done. They've got different types of enemies on different parts of the border. It's an active battle scene, but the government has done something very different than most countries. The Turkish initiative was to build products for themselves so that no foreign country can tell you that you cannot do certain things. And that comes under this thing called ITAR. It's a non-ITAR country. It produces its own weapons. It has technology at the forefront of security. And when you have power, your security works. we don't have power, so our security doesn't work. You can't modernize your security. So the fundamental part, again, is getting the power right, then security works. When those two things work, then the economy begins to thrive. And that will make sure that the possibilities of jobs are there. But as you understand the African condition, the infrastructure is terrible. Roads are not working. The railroads are, well, just coming along in the 21st century. Air travel is very expensive. So again, like Turkey, roads, bridges, better infrastructure, tollways, and giving that to, if you put that in place, you've got the ease of commerce, and people think African commerce works on the roads. So the 4 elements of Reset Nigeria is those 4 things. And focusing on those 4 things alone, don't try to do anything else. The economy will work. And I believe that if we can focus on those 4 things, we're going to have a complete restart, a resurrection of the Nigerian
These
economy.
are very ambitious initiative, but we have heard of this time and again. Other candidates have been saying this, campaigning on this. We will tackle the insecurity, we will tackle the power, the poor energy sector, especially the electricity, which Nigeria, arguably, according to many reports, is the largest power deficit in the world. Yes. But why PP? Why the Youth Progressive Party, especially the top 3? I know you've been asked this time and again, but I'm also throwing this question to you. Why the Youth Progressive Party? Why not the top 3 parties? Yes. And all these top 3 parties have been campaigning for this, that they are going to tackle them. But why your party, and how are you going to do this?
Well, it's a great question, and I answer it in some very interesting ways that I hope young people will appreciate. YPP, the Young Progressives Party, stands for those 2 things in the first element, youth and progressiveness. The other 2 parties have stayed. They're old, nothing's changed. If you go back, if you were in a coma 30 years ago and woke up, the same people were there, the same president would still be there. Nothing's changed. And again, that definition of insanity is what we're living. We're doing the same thing over and over again. So why am I going to live in a country that doesn't interest the youth? And that is one of the problems with the voter apathy. People don't want to vote anymore. If I'm going to still vote for the same people over and over again, why bother? I'm not voting. They're just going to ruin the country anyway. So, you know, it's a bit of a brave move. I joined the YPP because I believe we understood each other, what exactly we wanted to do. If I joined any of those other parties, what would happen? I'd have to go to the bottom, start from there. By the time I get there, I'll be 70 or 80 years old, a spent force, and what ingenuity, what energy do I bring to the most populous country on the African continent? So it's a calculated move. It's not. It's a move for the brave. It's not something you take lightly.
Of course.
It's going to be a very expensive measure, but I believe that where the position globally where new ideas are needed, Africa needs this more desperately. I believe if Nigeria sneezes, the rest of Africa will get a cold. And I believe that if we do the right thing, other African countries will follow suit with cerebral minds, energetic leader. In some countries, I'm almost close to retiring. I'm 58 years old, 59 in December, as my wife always reminds me.
Congratulations.
But I think the most important thing is that I'm bringing a different kind of energy into a place where the leaders are 20 or 30 years older than me.
I would like to expand more about this idea of renewable energy.
Yes.
Renewable energy, arguably, I mean, it's not cheap. It's not affordable for many, especially in Nigeria. I personally, who is from the country, I have seen it's how people even, struggling to afford to buy fuel, let alone what you call the renewable energy. How is this going to be translated to the common people on the streets to convince them that, look, you need to shift away your mindsets from the conventional, if you like, the traditional way of sourcing energy to the so-called renewable energy you are trying to persuade Nigerians or Africa at large?
Africa at large, we're the hottest place on earth. The connotation of Africa with anything else is sun and heat and, oh my God, you're going to get fried. It's so hot. Let me go back to answer this question with a question you asked just previously. Now, I come from a different background from most people. I was the Undersecretary for Renewable Energy at the United Nations at an organization called IREO, and it had a global footprint. I've worked in the energy business, and I'm an expert at it. I build my own energy systems. I build lithium-ion storage packages globally. I'm in 18 countries. I understand this. It's not like a promise of, you don't go to a gardener to take your heart out. You go to somebody who's a cardiologist, and they will know. From my experience in life, I build power systems. I understand how to embed power. And renewable energy is one of those things. Also, I have a very strong military background, and I'm involved in the military-industrial complex even here in Turkey. It's one of the businesses that I do here. And that expertise also allows me to be able to tackle the security element. And as I said, there's only two things that bother me about Africa today: power and security. And anybody who comes with the energy to understand that and the experience to fix that is going to be one of the great names of the future of Africa. Now, yes, renewable energy is expensive by the notion of it's something you do for yourself. But in Adamawa State, for instance, in Nigeria,
which is in northern part of Nigeria.
Yes, in the northeast. Yeah. The grid goes through the Yola Disco, and in the Nigerian grid, that has 7 megawatts of power from the conventional source. I've put on in a industrial zone in Mayobewa, just outside Yola, almost 80% of that same power, 5 megawatts on a farm with renewable energy, no grid connection, and we're producing milk, yogurt, cheese, ice cream. In fact, the factory is built by a Turkish company. We came together to show that this can be done. And that is just an example of what we can do. Now, the power is coming from the sun. We're trapping the sun, storing that sun power in our lithium-ion storage boxes, which is the big difference. That's the game changer in renewables. Being able to store the power, because traditionally, the solar panel works when the sun's out. But when there's no sun and darkness, you don't have that power. So we're able to store that power in battery systems. And then if you can imagine taking that into villages and towns, we're fixing factories. We don't need 5 megawatts in villages. We need 500 kilowatts, a megawatt.
So the question, are you going to distribute this free of charge, or are you going to subsidize it to the locals?
And that's where the expertise working at the United Nations come from. Every year we have the COP26, or in Africa this year will be the COP27. There's $100 billion worth of funds for renewable energy. Less than 1% of that money has been tackled by African countries. Why? Because the know-how is not there. Our leaders are older, they're not adjusted to the new thinking. The biggest employer of anybody in the world is the renewable energy sector. In America, it's overtaken the oil and gas sector. Renewables work, there's funding for it, but you need to know how to get it. And if you have that expertise, yes, it's not going to be as, I would say, cost-effective now, but over the next few years, we're going to see the costs come down. It has already come down significantly. In the last 10 years, over 50%. But what is vital to this is that Africa is the land of the sun. We need to trap that resource and use it. While everybody else is suffering from climate change, we need to be able to trap that sun and use it for our people. And once you can do that, it's cheaper fuel, it's cheaper power, and it works differently. And it's an educational process. When your leader knows what to do, the people will follow along, and I'm counting on that.
My next question will be about the burgeoning relationship between Turkey and Africa.
Yes.
Thanks to the current administration, yes. We've seen a large or effective performance in terms of building or fostering the relationship between Turkey and Africa. Now, many embassies across the continent, of course, even construction companies, investors investing on the continent. And it's a win-win relationship, if you like. What do you think? And as I just heard from you, you are working on several projects, yes. Here in Turkey. Yes. So what's the potential of working with Turkey, and why Turkey?
I've been coming here since the early 2000s when I was in Formula One, actually. That was my first time as an owner. I came for the race here. And between 2007 and now, the amount of incredible infrastructure and change that I've witnessed personally is one of the reasons why I keep coming back. I keep coming back to learn, and I keep coming back to partner. But one very specific thing that's happened in the last, I would say, 24 months, is the actual physical involvement of President Erdogan bringing Turkey into Africa and partnering. Most other countries that come in have an imperialist idea. They want to take our raw materials. They want to, control us. Turkey has termed it in more of a partnership with Africa. We trade. We understand. There's expertise. As I said, in the military side, there's non-ITAR. This is what we need. We need somebody who's going to lend a hand, not to come and school us on how to live. And that non-imperialist mindset is what has really sort of engineered this real love affair between Turkey and African countries. And more specifically, I think that we learn from what we see here. You've got an incredible history in Turkey from thousands of years ago to today, and you can see it live everywhere you go. There's nothing in Africa that has been built that has lasted this long, and we intend to change that. And I must say that, speaking impartially, I've got to be, again, very grateful to President Erdogan for actually being bold enough to challenge the status quo globally and come out and be a friend to Africa. And that's what we need right now.
So you, as somebody who has been here time and again and experiencing the achievement Turkey is performing, which is a win-win relationship, if you like. But how do you think the Africans are welcoming this relationship? Do you think there's awakening of, there's a country, Turkey, which is challenging the status quo, or some African countries still experiencing so-called post-colonialism? So how do you think Africans are welcoming this? And also in the midst of China. China is also one of the, country now performing, having footprints across the continent.
Very deep footprints. Again, I have to say, I fell in love with the idea of what Turkey is doing to Africa, and it's very simple. We know what expertise you have. Turkey's grown so strong now that it has the ability to enter our environment and bring in the expertise in the military side. As I said, you've got active battlefields with Syria, Iraq, internal battles, Armenia. You've seen the expertise of Turkish ingenuity in the Russia-Ukraine fight that's going on right now. Turkey's performing. It's not staying silent. To be able to challenge the status quo wasn't difficult. It needed a brave mind. It needed a brave soul. And I think the Turkish president has done that. And he's brought along Turkey Incorporated. Companies are coming in now more confident. The African acceptance of Turkey is actually really good to see now, because products are coming in. Turkish companies are performing very well. And the biggest advertising you have is Turkish Airlines. And it's in pretty much every African country. And it's really performing very well. But the trade is open, whether it's the learning side of things with healthcare or schooling, universities, or trading on everything from textiles to even cosmetics. We're seeing that. This is just the beginning. And I think when leaders such as myself come forward and want to learn and not afraid to learn, we bring better things back to our continent and to our nation. And I'm again, very proud to be at the forefront of that since 2007.
To expand more with this, the insecurity challenge, not only in Nigeria, across many African countries. Of course, Turkey has its own challenges, but it has the expertise.
Absolutely.
As we already spoken in, from the beginning, that it's tackling its enemies. It has the expertise. Yes. So how can this expertise, the mind, can it also help its African allies to tackle the insecurity challenges? This
is an ongoing, exciting area for the Turkish military-industrial complex. From government-owned companies like Havelsan, Aselsan, or BMC, the door that was opened by President Erdogan to Africa has now brought new technologies, new know-how. I say that Nigeria is an AK-47 nation. Everybody from the bandits to the kidnapper, the army, everybody uses an AK-47. I've spent a lot of time in Turkey with, over the last sort of 18 months, talking to a lot of manufacturers here. And the weapon systems that you have here are state-of-the-art. They're daily in trial around the world, even within Turkey. So that idea of Turkey being an innovator in the military side of things helps us. many countries have shifted away from their colonial attachment. We're seeing this in Mali, in Chad, Niger. I think they've even pivoted fully to Turkish equipment. That is really part of that growth that Turkey is going to experience. Not dictating to us what you can have and what you cannot have. We may be able to buy something from America. Like Nigeria now, we have some issues with the Leahy law, which prohibits some high-tech equipment to be sold to Nigeria because of human rights abuses. What's interesting for us is that law prohibits us from buying things that help us keep our country safe and help Americans in Nigeria stay safe. So we decided to pivot, and we've come to Turkey. We've looked at equipment that works for us, non-ITAR, non-restrictive, the ability for technology transfer to happen. That's what you want with the partners, and I believe that the new African leadership is seeing this and is saying, you know what, I'd rather be at a par on a table with somebody who understands my problems than somebody who's dictating, and I don't even know what their influence is within my country.
My last question will be about sports. Of course, the performance, when you compare current performance of African countries in terms of international sports participation, with decades, there seems to be a lackluster, if you like, the stagnant, something happening which before many African countries, particularly Nigeria, were performing well. Yes. What's going on? And you, as someone who has a legacy of Formula One, which arguably it's non-white competition, you changed the mindset there.
Yes.
But then, as somebody who is also aspiring to become the next president of Nigeria, how will you, uplift the sports sector?
The sports, as Africans, there are a few things we're really good at globally. Arguably, the music sector, Afrobeat, is dominating the world today. Nollywood is a $7 billion industry producing movies for the African consumption. Our sportsmen and women have been our ambassadors in the past, whether it's here in Turkey or in anywhere in Europe. You've got the Alcochas, you've got Amonike, you've got a lot of people. Those are ambassadors. Those are the goodwill ambassadors. The informal economy in Nigeria is extraordinarily strong. But when you have all the state leadership that doesn't play sports, that doesn't understand it, and comes from that African mentality that you're a hooligan if you play football in the streets. I'm growing up, if I told my father I was playing soccer, he'd lose his mind. But as a cricket player, everyone thought it was okay. Rugby was okay. But Nigerians have continually pushed that barrier. When your government does not put the infrastructure in play for the Olympics, for women's sports, it's natural talent that we're seeing that's succeeding right now. So my influence I would like to have to that young nation of 230 million people and an average age of 19 is to create that infrastructure so that we change the narrative about Nigeria. Before we were excelling, now we're known for things that are really not complementary. And that comes from state or leadership that doesn't change. We want to re-energize the youth. We want to give them the reason to go out and be proudly Nigerian. And that is something that comes with experience internationally. I've experienced what that feels like as a team owner, as a driver. It is one of the most overwhelming things. And I believe that if the right kind of leadership in Nigeria is shown, and in other countries like South Africa, Morocco, Egypt, we're seeing the rise of, the potential rise of a great sporting dynasty. The leadership needs to change, and it needs to energize its people with infrastructure for sports, and then we will see better things.
Thank you so much for having your time with us, Mr. Malik Ado-Ibrahim.
Thank you.
Thank you once again for being here with us at TRT World.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.